All right, everyone. So I saw this video from Hot Boy Spicy where he responds to Plague of Gripes' video about Naruto. You know, Naruto, the self-made hypocrite, which is a video I'm sure a lot of you probably already know about. And I'm curious to watch this one and see what he says in response to the points that Plague of Gripes made in that video. And it's interesting because I was asked to react to one of his videos before, and unfortunately, I think that video got blocked by YouTube's copyright system, so I wasn't able to upload it. I still have the video, so who knows? Maybe if I do some editing, I'll be able to upload it, and I'll be able to get past YouTube's copyright bots. So who knows? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, let's go ahead and watch this one because I'm curious to hear what his thoughts are in response to Plague of Gripes about the points that he made in regards to Naruto and how Kishimoto's message kind of gets lost about hard work overcoming natural gifts when you realize Naruto himself does have a lot of natural gifts. So let's go ahead and check the volume. And as always, guys, remember to check the description for links. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. You know, all the stuff the YouTube algorithm likes to see. I'm now aware that Plague has a tweet that addresses his video as mainly done up for gags. I do question the validity of this claim, being that he has yet to even pin a comment elucidating what is represented as not his actual stance, despite knowing how many people use this video as ammo to propagate. Propagate what? Oh, the whole thing about okay, so yeah, the Naruto bad argument. So even if he disagrees with a large portion of his video, consider this critique a counter to anyone who references Plague's video as proof that Naruto is a hypocrite. Okay.
I don't make videos like this, so let's make a video like this. I blame the YouTube algorithm for my desperate attempt at claiming relevancy. So without further ado, let's talk about why this video sucks. No, not why the creator's channel sucks, not why he personally sucks. Nope, just this video. I don't really know anything about him outside this video, including the other content on his channel, and I'm not interested in finding out more about it after watching all of this video either, although some parts of it are funny, and I engage in
yeah, some parts are pretty funny. I'm not
a bit
going.
of tomfoolery myself from time to time. So
yeah, especially this bit that he made about Boruto. That was pretty funny.
From one goobering gigawatt to another, Plague, I appreciate your efforts in influencing me to exhale out of my nostril aggressively. I hate intros, so I'll be brief in how I'm going to go about dissecting his take on the series. I'm not going to show any particular clips of him talking. I'll mention what he says before attempting to dismantle it, and then move on to his next criticism to do the same. If you want to confirm or deny any of my contentions, for example, if you believe I'm strawmanning anything he says in his video, you can go make sure of that yourself and then afterwards comment about how I'm gay for Naruto and that's why I defend this story. To which, you'd be right. So one of the first things Plague seems to paint a negative color is that there are too many Narutos. While he briefly mentions this, and it is not a main component of his spite towards the series, I do want to elaborate on why I believe there are so many quote-unquote Narutos, and why I believe it to be a net positive for the story. You see, each Naruto represents a different facet of Naruto that reveals another potential conclusion. Kaiza represents Naruto's headstrong opposition to evil if he lacked the strength to stand.
It's interesting because I think Plague actually mentions this in his video. Yeah, he mentions that, yeah, it's actually pretty normal for stories to have, you know, obviously you've got the protagonist and then you've got the antagonist, and each antagonist represents a certain trait that the main character has, and that's pretty normal. I think he actually mentions this in the video.
And against it.
Also, it's interesting. I do just want to mention one thing about this scene in particular, because I think I also brought this up in a previous video. But one of the reasons why, again, other than the argument that I usually use about why people should read the manga as opposed to just watching the anime, because you know some people will use the anime as a source for an argument that they'll make in response to someone else's opinion about something in regards to the actual series, and they'll say, well, no, because the anime does this, and I'll always say, well, you can't really use the anime because the anime adds things, But another reason why another reason why I'll say you should read the manga as opposed to the anime is because this scene in particular, you can see oh god, what was his name? He just said it, Kaizo, I think.
A different facet of Naruto that reveals another potential conclusion. Kaizo represents Naruto.
Kaizo, yeah. I think he was Inari's adoptive father, yeah. And yeah, in this scene in the manga, like his arms were cut off. Like here, when he was tied up, like no, you can clearly see in the manga the way it was drawn, his arms were cut off. In the anime, the goons were carrying hammers, but in the manga they were carrying swords. Like that's again the reason why I'll say you should read the manga is because you'll see just how much the anime changes things, or they'll add things to completely ruin the context of what Kishimoto was doing in the actual manga. So that's why I'll say yes, definitely read the manga over the anime, not just for the reason that I mentioned before, but also because, like I said, it's because of the censorship. Because trust me, the Naruto manga is way more brutal. It's way more brutal.
To stand against it. Tsunade's kid brother is reminiscent of the same whimsical, childlike romanticism of the path to Hokage. A path that Tsunade knows all too well, more often than not leads to either utter failure or utter annihilation. Or how about Obito, who represents that road to Hokage of despair overcame ambition? A crossroads Naruto himself came across on his path. It isn't bad that there are so many Narutos.
No.
It's actually brilliant, because each one of these Narutos uniquely captures a specific aspect of Naruto's journey, and always shows another potential outcome that Naruto could have reached from just one minor distinction. As Plague points out, Iruka does in fact share a similar past with Naruto, but we shouldn't look at it like Naruto was a success story where Iruka was still a perpetual failure. Because just like Naruto, Iruka did succeed as a shinobi. He saved Naruto from the darkness, saved him yet again from despair, inspired his...
Yeah, this was a really cool moment. So we had Iruka at the beginning, we had Iruka here, and then one more moment he had in the war arc, and I kind of wish that there was more, you know? Like, I just wish that he was given more to do in the actual series.
Saved him yet again from despair, inspired his ninja way. As a teacher first and foremost, someone whose main prerogative should be to make his students shine the brightest, Iruka succeeded brilliantly. We never once see this man go on about how he aspires to be one of the greatest, but instead, all we ever see is just how much he cares for the ones that will eventually succeed him. Saying Naruto is what Iruka could have been if he had the same godlike genes is missing the point by a mile. I find it funny how right before this negative outlook on how there are so many Narutos, he actually discusses an almost identical phenomenon that takes place in the thematic structure of Batman, which oftentimes takes facets of
Batman the Animated Series, which by the way, if you haven't seen, go watch Batman the Animated Series. Trust me, you'll be doing yourself a favor.
Many notorious foes, he is in actuality facing a part of himself. He at least touches on how this same phenomenon is portrayed in Naruto's own confrontations with his various antagonists, yet, again, he disregards how this can be applied to other aspects of the story in ways that bolster the narrative. Plague then goes into the common criticisms of Naruto's hypocrisy, like how he's supposed to be the boy who overcomes his limitations with effort, but as the series progresses, you realize he only ever had advantages, seemingly. So firstly, the Nine Tails. It's almost comedic genius how Plague talks about Naruto using the Nine Tails as a scapegoat and becoming a better ninja over a clip of Naruto's transformation on the Tenchi Bridge, when the whole point of this battle was to stress the negative relation to using this insane power. Naruto's psyche is not only compromised during its utilization, but because of this compromisation, he wounds Sakura as well. Yeah,
he ends up injuring her, which causes him to basically completely reject the Nine Tails' power and take Yamato's words to heart about how he needs to learn to train himself as opposed to just relying on the Nine Tails' power. Because one thing that I think Yamato says that is indeed true is that, you know, like Naruto himself is pretty strong, because Naruto is capable of being the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, which I think at one point is stated that not anyone could have just been the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, because again, like the Nine Tails has an insane amount of chakra, and not everyone has the capability of being able to contain that much power.
Hell, the only ones who compliment Naruto on his powers here are the villains, who say he's matured as a tailed beast host, not as a ninja, relating him to the beast that is the Nine Tails, not the person, Naruto Uzumaki. Even their compliments are almost taunting. I'll touch more on the Nine Tails later when it becomes relevant again, but just remember this little tidbit for later. So Plague's comment on how we don't ever see Naruto trying, or even learning, is just, well, odd. I don't know how you can read or watch this series and come out with that takeaway. There are numerous upon numerous...
Yeah, that's also something that is actually that's actually incorrect, because we do see, like, yeah, he brings up one example right here. We do see Naruto train a lot, and not just when he's training to create the Rasen Shuriken. When he was also training to just learn the Rasengan, we see him put in a lot of effort in order to be able to learn it. Now, you could say that maybe Naruto, it does have some advantages, because Jiraiya specifically states that it's an ability that took the fourth Hokage, that took Minato like 3 years to develop, and then Naruto manages to do it in like, what, a month? So you could say that, okay, yeah, maybe like from that perspective, you could say that Naruto's a little bit, what is it? A little bit gifted. Although you could also make the argument that the reason why why he needed such a long time to develop the abilities, because he was developing an ability from scratch. He wasn't just learning from someone else, which, as anyone knows, creating a completely new technique is way more difficult than learning a technique that's already been created. So you could also make the argument that you could also make the argument that it makes sense that Naruto learned it at such a quicker pace, as opposed to Minato, because Minato was literally creating the ability. He wasn't just learning it.
Numerous examples of Naruto's perseverance when faced with harsh training. Even whole sections of Naruto going through the ropes of learning curves.
Yeah, I even forgot about this, when he was being trained to learn to add wind nature chakra to his abilities from Asuma, because his nature type is also wind.
Harsh training. Even whole sections of Naruto going through the ropes of learning curves, and then having to adapt against those learning curves in his own unique way. Because, well,
his nature type, I don't know what I said before. It's because he's stupid
that he thinks outside the box to surpass that curve. There are so many instances of whole training sections of the story that portray this phenomenon again and again. And all of this is always accompanied by Naruto, first and foremost, having to struggle for extended periods of time in order to finally get to that point of success. So one of his next points is pretty interesting, because it's actually kind of right. He just misses the intention. Plague basically says Naruto in actuality never wants to become Hokage, just acknowledged. And this idea is similar to the main dilemma of Naruto's character arc in part 1 of the story. His ambition was not only motivated by something meager, but immature. He wanted to be Hokage to be acknowledged. Yet that's not even how the title itself works. You have to be acknowledged first to become Hokage, not the other way around.
And that's something that he did learn later on from Itachi. Itachi himself says that, God, what did he say? He says something, but he also says at the end, it's only the person who's acknowledged that gets to become Hokage.
Not only that, but this motivation started to become more of a placeholder more so than anything else, being that Naruto was beginning to actually become acknowledged by the people around him as early as the Land of Waves. I wonder, just why make
How could you ever understand what it's like to lose something if you've always been
Naruto's motivation so negative in part 1? Does it perhaps have something to do with his later development? Perhaps something to do with Sasuke? If you want the full and complete answer to this, watch my 2 videos covering the dynamic of Naruto and Sasuke after.
I think this was the video that I reacted to that got blocked. Yeah, again, I think I'm gonna, because I do want to upload it, so I think I'm gonna maybe do some editing on that video so I can help get it through the copyright block, or the copyright bot, excuse me.
Links in the description below. I refuse to rehash what I've already said before here, as that would make the video way longer than it already is, and I've already discussed it to the best of my abilities in that series. So Naruto's genetics. Plague talks extensively on this, and it's something that many people for years now have voiced mainly negative criticisms on. I personally can see the argument for how genetics play too much of a factor in what determines who is a powerhouse in the story. It is indeed pretty hard to ignore the fact that most of the top tier characters in the verse have a special Kekkei Genkai
are people who are genetically gifted, yeah.
But the thing is, Naruto, despite being one of these genetic powerhouses, is still an underdog. He isn't an underdog in the combative sense, obviously, but rather the circumstantial sense. He was scorned and ostracized in childhood, and even after rising above that crisis, the villagers' worries were proven valid on more than one occasion when Naruto lost control of his inner darkness. Yet he eventually rises above this circumstance too, not by finishing the job in a traditional sense, which would ultimately lead to more hatred, like his predecessors had done many times before him, but by coming at his darkness in a novel way, with an attempt to not only acknowledge it, but understand it, rather than simply disregarding it as something only worthy of being subjugated and silenced. Naruto's whole journey itself sees him oppose the fate of the very world. Even a minute change towards his vision is so substantial, he alone could never make it happen, no matter how powerful he is. Against Obito, he needed people at his back, and against the full force of the army Madara concocted, he needed the unity of all shinobi. Naruto needed people, and that's the point. Where he was once ostracized and forced into solitude, he eventually evolves into claiming an ambition that relies on cooperation from many. This drastic change couldn't have possibly transpired from Naruto's genetic advantages, but instead, his mentality. It was the assistance from others and his resolve to push through despair that contributed mostly to Naruto's success. For Naruto as a character specifically, his genetic advantages do not at all hinder his role as an underdog that rises above circumstance. And yes, Naruto is privileged to have the best teachers at his disposal.
He is
again,
a little bit
this
privileged.
Doesn't at all change the fact that the
For being
strength he
honest.
garnered from their tutelage could have turned against the Leaf if Naruto had taken one wrong step. Naruto chose the path of most resistance on his quest to become Hokage. Even if he is the fourth son, had he kept to this exact same philosophy being a nobody, eccentric people like Jiraiya would have surely noticed. But that's not even mentioning the future payoff of having Naruto learning from the best. That payoff being when Naruto surpasses them. Some examples being when Naruto surpasses Jiraiya in the Pain arc, or in the War arc, when Naruto saves Kakashi from mental anguish like a teacher would for a student. Plague also touches on the reincarnation stuff a bit in this section of his video, but I want to save that topic for the end, so I'll skip over it here.
The reincarnation thing is the point where I do agree with him the most. This was, I think most people do kind of agree with this, that this was probably not the smartest move from Kishimoto. It's like, if he wanted to say that, and I think Swag also did cover this in probably one of the first few videos that we reacted to on this channel, but like if he just had like Hagoromo just say, you know, the way you act just kind of reminds me a lot of my own son, my youngest son Ashura, like that would have been fine. But to say that you're his literal reincarnation was just, no, like that to me, it's still a decision I'm not a fan of. And it does call a lot of things into question. And then there's the whole prophecy thing. The whole prophecy that Naruto was always meant for greatness, and that it turns out that none of his accomplishments, and I will still argue this, but while I could concede that it doesn't necessarily take away from all of his accomplishments, it does kind of cheapen them a little bit, because what used to be a result of just his hard work is now kind of called into question, because like, okay, well, so did you accomplish all these things because you worked hard to get them, or were you just always destined to achieve them? You see what I mean? Because again, the prophecy, which is confirmed to be like the great Toad Sage's prophecies, are always stated to be 100% accurate. So yeah, I mean, oh boy.
Moving on though, in a couple of instances during the course of his video, Plague brings up that Naruto should have been killed several times due to his own negligence and lack of preparedness. Yet this completely disregards the point of each specific confrontation Naruto encounters, which, by the way, yes,
Naruto's supposed to be unprepared in this reunion to set up for his later growth.
does sometimes greatly differ depending on the fight. But even throwing that aside, I mean, it's not like Naruto went to Frogland to train in Frog Jutsu to prepare for his battle with Pain. It's not like he even brought Goon Squad to help back him up against Pain's superior numbers. It's not like he came wearing a scroll on his back to counteract the problem with Sage Mode's time limit. And this is just one example, by the way. Even before his fight with Neji, a fight that Plague touches on for a lengthy portion of his video, Naruto is undergoing training to prepare for this very match. Plague then goes on a very extended tirade analyzing every one of Naruto's fights before Neji in his own unique way. I'm not even going to bother covering all this, as I'm too lazy to meticulously poke holes in every one of his conclusions here, and it might end up being redundant anyway, as what he says just kind of bleeds into his discussion on the Neji fight. Although, I will stop to say that the Kiba fight, it does have a little more merit than what Plague is giving it credit for here. That being Naruto validating his way of the ninja to never give up by displaying his victory to everyone in such an important setting. He was—
Well, I gotta be honest. Like, this was not one of my favorite fights. Like, I think I actually forget that this fight even happened, if I'm being honest.
beat up and knocked around.
I don't know about you guys. Like, what do you guys think? Like, are you the same as me? Like, you forget that this fight ever even happened, or I don't know. Like, maybe you're one of the people who actually did like it. Which, if that's the case, maybe you could let me know why you liked it. Cause, I mean, if you think about it, Naruto kind of only won because he got lucky. Yeah, not one of my favorite fights.
Never once let that deter his motivation for victory, and because of this tenacity, he is rewarded with victory. Yeah, sure, you could chalk this up to Naruto just having more physical prowess due to his genetic advantages, which is obviously a factor, but we also can't act like Naruto couldn't have thrown in the towel when it seemed like he had no chance of victory. Kiba underestimated Naruto. Everyone did, but Naruto came out on top by following his way of the ninja. This is important because he also loses at times following this road too. Wonder why. But yeah, I agree on the grounds that this fight is just kinda lame. Sure, Naruto will powers it out and wins by doing something completely out of pocket, but Kiba all around came out just looking more impressive as a ninja, which I guess despite what I said before still makes me not
And then
care
he just
much
gets
for this fight.
completely forgotten about till the Sasuke retrieval arc, and then after that barely shows up and does something in the war arc, and then that's it. He just kind of disappears.
Because Naruto just wins by kinda getting up a lot, which is ultimately boring to watch. But here's the catch. Something Plague fails to mention about Naruto's incompetency early on, that being that the story actually acknowledges this. Naruto eventually defeats Neji, yet still, just like his other monstrously gifted adversaries, is not granted promotion to Chunin. Only Shikamaru, the man who showed real practical approaches to ninja warfare, was granted the title of Chunin, because the story did acknowledge the fact that at this point, Naruto still wasn't a competent enough ninja to rise in the ranks.
No, he wasn't.
So we're here, the conclusive end. Plague argues Neji is right in explaining that Hokage are born, not made. And I think Plague has already made his first mistake by getting too hung up on the tangible aspects that make someone Hokage. You see, while being super powerful is an important aspect of being Hokage, and while also not being willfully ignorant is just as important, the point of this battle isn't even really about Hokage, in actuality. Yes, Naruto has many misconceptions about the title even in this fight, and like I've said before, that's kind of the point. But the whole moral of this fight isn't necessarily what it takes to become Hokage, but instead, what it takes to surpass overbearing odds. Neji is locked, has always been locked. His goals set, his fate set. He believes his fate to be concrete, impenetrable, supreme. But Neji doesn't even acknowledge the fact that fate itself is nebulous, that one's own idea of a fated outcome is up to their individual perspective in the first place. Neji believes, since he is a genius, and Naruto isn't, that he will surely overcome him. Fate dictates that the superior will always win, after all. Yet Neji, with the idea of fate so tightly locking him down, can't even see his own, much less Naruto's. Neji has eyes that pierce through one's chakra, their very source of life. So he deludes himself into believing his view on destiny would certainly operate the same. Yet he can't even see with his superior eyes the chakra lurking deep within Naruto. Until it's too late. The very chakra that used to dictate Naruto's own fate of solitude. Naruto takes hold of that energy that used to represent his cursed fate and uses it in an attempt to change his own, by using it on someone who, just like he once had, believes that his destiny is one that is locked and forever doomed. Sure, Naruto wins with the help of his innate advantages, but that power itself could have at one point been used to instead attack the audience observing this fight had he kept on his previously lonely road. Yet here he uses it productively to prove a point. A point about having the power to change. Even the power he uses here to fight Neji is later revealed to be a conscious decision of the Nine Tails. Not to be willfully helpful sporadically, but to use his power to constantly wane and weaken Naruto's seal. Naruto is constantly fighting against the Nine Tails' looming darkness, trying his best to never submit to those overwhelming odds. Of course, Naruto would win against a man who's given up even on the idea of fighting back against circumstance. And no, the Indra and Asura revelation in the final arc doesn't contradict the moral of this fight at all. It actually does the opposite.
It does a little bit. I may have to disagree with him there. It does kind of a little bit.
It bolsters it. When critics of the series see that Naruto is the reincarnation of Asura, they typically relate that to this fight with Neji, because they also typically miss the point of not just one of, but both of these story beats. Was Naruto always meant to be one of the strongest given this revelation? Is Neji actually right? Since Naruto was in actuality the man with greater gifts, did fate allow him to be the victor? Well, these questions are irrelevant to the actual moral of this narrative decision, because it is not just Naruto, but Sasuke that this revelation is tied to. See, the whole point of the Indra and Asura stuff is to reinforce the main overarching theme of the story. Can humans truly understand each other? Can this idea of mutual understanding bring peace? These questions represent Naruto's later evolved path to Hokage. They are what represent his true dream. The title of Hokage is not separate from this, but instead synonymous with his dream of the future. For him to be a reincarnation of an entity that is in constant war with another, that war being so great that the conflict even transcends generations, is a stroke of genius by Kishimoto. Hashirama and Madara were also reincarnations of these ancient men, and they ended up following that same fated resolution of conflict. Their story is a microcosm of the state of the world. Indra and Asura's endless battle mirrors the shinobi world's endless wars. A ceaseless cycle Naruto eventually makes his main goal to find a solution for. If Naruto continued the cycle of conflict, actually succumbed to the circumstances of fate, then his final battle with Sasuke should have ended with one of them dying. But that doesn't happen. Naruto perseveres against even his...
Well, yeah, of course it wasn't gonna happen, because... well, here's the thing, we knew Sasuke wasn't gonna die, because... I think if I remember correctly, yeah, the poster for the movie that was supposed to be taking place after this showed that Sasuke was there, so Sasuke we knew was still gonna be alive. And Naruto, of course, wasn't gonna die because he's the main character, so that can't happen. And... I get what he's saying, I do, but it's like it still doesn't technically take away from the point that a lot of people make, that the whole Asura reincarnation does kind of take away from it a little bit, because it's just okay, even if you don't agree with that, you still got to admit that the whole thing about the prophecy is still valid. The criticism of, Naruto being prophesized to be this guy who is going to save the world is just, it does kind of prove that what Neji said was right. All of us have a predetermined destiny, and nothing we do to try to fight it is going to stop that, because that's essentially what Naruto ended up doing. He ended up saving the world for a little bit until the war started, but we're not going to talk about that. But technically he did do that, so in a way, like, he did kind of, it's weird because he did kind of like prove himself wrong in that fight. At least what he was trying to say in that fight is that like Neji gave up trying to fight against destiny because he believed that, no one's destiny could, like, you can't fight against it. And then Naruto, of course, was fighting him and saying that, no, it is possible to fight against it. And yet later on, he basically ends up like following his own destiny of saving the world. So it does kind of take away from it. It's like I still am not a fan of it. I don't think anything anyone can say is going to make me a fan of it. Who knows? Maybe someone will say something that'll change my mind. But at this point, it's like, no, I still hate the prophecy thing. I hate the Asura and Indra reincarnation. It's stupid. It's one of those things that Kishimoto should just... I don't understand why no one told him that maybe this isn't a good idea. Yeah, just still not a fan of it.
Own essence when he finally reaches Sasuke, ending a cycle of conflict that began all the way back during the shinobi world's conception. Naruto proved in his fight with Neji that one should aspire to rise above circumstance, and even perceivable fate. And Naruto later validates his own claim when this ideology helps him persevere against the fate of the very world. Naruto was never a story mainly about hard work overcoming natural talent. The main theme, even as early as the first arc, displayed something entirely different. I urge you, dear viewers, watch episode 19 of Naruto, because that is the clear vision Kishimoto had planned for the overarching theme of the story. The most important scene, the scene that sets up Naruto's whole journey as a ninja, is right here at the very end of this episode. Nothing to do with hard work's perseverance against genius, but everything to do with the state of the world. And this glimpse here, not an answer as grand as mending this broken world, but a glimmering beginning of a path that will eventually lead to an answer on a similar scale. And this moral has a conclusion, and a great one at that. I still fail to understand how you can overlook something seemingly so glaring in favor of a theme that was only ever emphasized with Lee, and not even near as prevalent as the theme I'm referring to at that. It pains me when Plague says Naruto failed its own main theme, when he doesn't even know what the main theme is himself. So, Plague of Gripes,
Well,
my final message to you. If you're going to criticize a story, you better think a bit more before putting it into video format. Otherwise, people with a slightly developed brain like myself will make you look kinda stupid. The video you made years ago now has garnered almost 2.5 million views by the time I'm uploading
yeah,
this
it's
video.
insane.
I commend you for making such
I think
a
it's at
putrid attempt at
2.6 last time I checked. But okay, so just want to make a slight comment on something that he said here about Plague of Gripes, like talking about how Naruto like failed its main theme, and the main theme being that hard work can overcome natural gifts. The thing is that I don't know if it's been a while since I've seen the video, but I don't think he ever said that that was like the main theme. I think that's one of the themes that Kishimoto was trying to say with the character of Naruto. You know, because of course, again, like he tries to depict him as an underdog, but at the same time, also I just noticed Sakura's hands are drawn a little bit weird here. But anyway, but I think that one of the themes is, like I said, the whole hard work can overcome natural gifts, and him using Naruto to do that. But again, yeah, like the point he was trying to say is that that kind of gets lost when you realize just how many natural gifts Naruto has, and it does kind of put him at like a level, or at least it affords him a path that a lot of people don't really have themselves. You know, it's not available to them. Whereas Naruto, of course, being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, being like having like Uzumaki blood in him, and then of course being the son of the Hokage, and and that affording him connections to characters like Kakashi and Jiraiya. He mentioned that even if like he wasn't the son of the fourth Hokage, that Jiraiya and Kakashi would have still taken notice of him. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, if I'm being honest. I do think that him being the son of Minato does kind of lead to someone like Jiraiya, of course, wanting to teach Naruto. And of course, if he wasn't the son of Minato, then you could say like he wouldn't be the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Like Kishimoto would have to write a completely different story as to why Naruto would be the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, because the only way he could be is because he was Minato's son. And yeah, so just want to say that
a Naruto critique do so well in the algorithm. Although,
but yeah, sorry, to the point that I originally wanted to say is that I don't think that he tried to say that hard work overcoming natural gifts was the main theme that the Naruto series was trying to say. I think that was one of the themes that or one of the messages that Kishimoto was trying to relate to us, the audience or the readers, and using the character of Naruto Uzumaki to relay that message to us does kind of get lost when you think about how many things Naruto has that work, or how many advantages that Naruto has.
in your intro, at least you acknowledge the fact that you don't know much about Naruto. Even if it is a joke, it was pretty meta that you spend the next 42 minutes completely validating the claim. I hope you're watching, and maybe even make a response to my response so that I can get that sweet, sweet YouTube traction, even though your video is close to.
However, stuff in that are just jokes for an internet comedy video, not actually my opinion. Wouldn't take it too seriously depending on whatever you're doing. I'd recommend just going with the source material, usually the best policy.
3 years old now, and at probably doesn't, nor should it matter to you anymore. But it does to me, because, as I said before, I am extremely gay for this yellow-haired orange boy. To the people who are expecting another traditional analysis video on Naruto from me, apologies for not having gone to that yet. I assure you, dear viewers, that my next upload will be precisely that. In the meantime, though, if you liked the video, go ahead and give it a nice little thumbs up. It really helps a smaller channel like mine potentially hit the algorithm. And most importantly, if you appreciate my content, please subscribe. I truly would love to see this channel go places.
I still don't understand why they did that to Anko.
And growth is the #1 motivator. Oh yeah, and check out my 2-part series on Naruto and Sasuke's dynamic if you haven't already. Links to those in the description below. I promise it's worth your time. So, with all that being said, Spice Boy out.
Yeah, that's the end of the video. Anyway, yeah. I mean, again, this is, for me, again, it's one of the most interesting topics to have in the Naruto fandom, about whether or not Naruto is indeed a hypocrite or whether he isn't. Again, I think that both sides do make good points. I think that people who say that, you know, that the whole message again does kind of get lost when you look at all the advantages that Naruto has, but then people say, well, yeah, but you got to look at all the things he has going against him. Again, I think both sides do make good points. I guess it just depends on who you ask and where they fall on the argument, whether they're on the side of no, Naruto is an underdog, or whether they're on the side of Naruto is not an underdog. I guess it just depends on who you ask. Anyway, so you know what? I'm gonna ask you guys. Let me know in the comments, which side of the argument are you guys on? Are you on the side of Naruto is an underdog, or is he not an underdog? And do you agree with a lot of the points made in this video, or do you still agree with what PlagueOfGripes said in his video? And let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, if you have a video you want me to watch, just let me know about it and I'll react to it. And consider leaving a like, sharing, subscribing, hitting the bell for notifications, and check the description for links to this video as well as Hotboy Spicy's channel. He does have other videos that I've seen on his channel that I would like to react to and get your guys' thoughts on, because he does make some good videos. And hopefully this time they won't get blocked, just like I hope this video won't get blocked. And as to the other video that someone else did ask me to react to, again, I'm gonna see if I can do some editing on that video so that hopefully when I do upload it, I'll be able to get past the copyright bots, which is just completely broken. That YouTube seriously needs to fix that. All right, so thank you guys again for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you for my next one. Bye for now.